Well, let's head to the US now, and joining me live is Associate Professor of American Politics at Seattle University, Dr. Patrick Schoettmer. Great to have you on the program again. What did you make of this?
We've seen a string of revocations of security coming from the White House, all targeted at former Democratic officials. And a lot of Americans tend to read it as essentially another example of the president's vindictiveness, that he's targeting people he perceives as critics or as hostile to his administration.
That's pretty much all it is, isn't it?
As far as we can tell, there may be something deeper to it, but I can't imagine what it would be.
Now, the Pentagon has backflipped on claims that Richard Marles, of course, as part of our government, and Pete Hegseth did not meet. Can you tell us more about that?
From what we can gather, there seems to have been a meeting when Marles came here to visit us in the U.S. He met with Vice President Vance and so forth. At first, the Defense Department was claiming it was a hapstance meeting. Then they backtracked on that. Americans are reading this as much as they read it at all as another example of the lack of professionalism that comes from picking people who don't have a background or a grounding more generally in Defense Department tradition and diplomacy.
Looking at the whole US-Australia thing, so much is made of Anthony Albanese not having a sit down with Donald Trump at this point. But from your eyes, you work in this day in, day out in this space, how important strategically is Australia to the US?
Well, we could see from the Biden administration that Australia was seen as an important regional as well as defense ally, particularly with the growing tensions we saw between China, concern about things like potential Taiwan, the little bit of shakiness that we had with the relationship with the Philippines. And so traditionally, the U.S. has seen Australia as a key ally, but the Trump administration has thrown out a lot of traditional American foreign policy approaches, and the relationship between the U.S. and Australia seems to be one of the things that they have abandoned traditional U.S. foreign policy thinking on.
And Donald Trump imposing 50% tariffs on India for buying Russian oil?
Yes, that seems to have been part of his moves to try to put pressure on Russia. But again, we've seen a lot of inconsistency with President Trump and how he's trying to manage the negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. There also seems to be a little bit of hostility, I think, with President Trump towards Asian allies in general. And so we don't really know why he chose this particular round, but this is actually one that both raised eyebrows and brought a little bit of support from both sides of the aisle. A lot of people see India as a critical trading partner, but it's also the case that a lot of people who support Ukraine have called for secondary sanctions for a while as a way to put additional pressure on Russian oil trades.
Now, just on that subject, despite all the bells and whistles and red carpet of the Trump meeting with Putin in Alaska, not much has happened.
No, we haven't really seen any substantive change. And I think the fact that we saw targeted bombings and targeted strikes right before the follow-up meeting between Trump and the European partners who accompanied Zelensky in his trip to Washington suggests that there is not going to be much movement there. And recent polling has suggested that Americans have increasingly soured on the prospect that President Trump is going to be able to move negotiations forward at all, which is resurfacing the longstanding debate that we've seen within the Republican Party itself between old school Reaganite hawks on one hand who want to support Ukraine and adopt a hard line against Russia, and the new wave Republicans who are much more sympathetic to Putin as a representative of the sort of populist nationalism that lies at the heart of their own personal ideology.
Dr. Patrick Schoettmer, are we seeing any noise from the Democratic Party? Are we seeing any potential leaders, or do they continue to be muted?
Well, usually when a party is out of power, when they lose a presidential election, there's a little bit of wandering in the desert. So it's not really that surprising that we've not seen like a single leader emerge. We probably won't see a central leader begin to emerge in the Democratic Party until after the midterm elections next year. We'll see some jockeying, and we have begun to see Democrats begin to send out feelers for the presidential election race. We see some people trying to position themselves to be the leader, particularly Gavin Newsom, who's adopted both a aggressive rhetorical line of attack against the president, but also has adopted Trump-like social media strategies to try to drive the message and take on sort of the aura of the party leadership. But I think the Democratic Party will continue to remain a little bit divided by itself as well as it tries to figure out its next direction.
Just finally, just on that, and for those that love news like you and I do, Gavin Newsom is the one fearless individual at the moment that is seeing an opportunity to attack rather than be attacked. It's happening from Donald Trump to him, but he is going back hard all the time. Even this morning I was looking at his feed.
Well, I wouldn't say that Newsom is the only one, but I would say he's certainly the most prominent. Newsom has always had a really sharp nose for the political moment. He's coming out of California. I mean, he comes from San Francisco, so he understands technology, he understands the media there. And we can see him really effectively messaging online. But we have others coming from the House, for example. You've seen Jasmine Crockett rising. We see in New York City the candidacy of Zoran Mamdani energizing a different group of part of the Democratic coalition. We've seen Democrats winning surprise races in like Iowa, for example, which is leading to a potential retirement by Joni Ernst rather than facing re-election, where she might face shakier odds than one would normally expect. So there's a lot of ferment and turmoil going on under the ground, and Democrats have a lot of potential leads. Newsom is, I think, the most prominent, but he's certainly not the only one.
Well, okay, we'll watch this space with interest, and those names, a couple of them aren't as prominent on the world stage. We'll watch and listen with interest. Good to talk to you, Dr. Patrick Schoettmer. We'll catch you soon.
Sounds good, Tim.